What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nintendo Land. Pokopia reviews have dropped pretty early this week. We already have them, and oh my gosh, they are really good. Like, really good. When I checked this morning, it was at a 90 on Metacritic. It's dropped one at an 89, but seriously, a super good title for Switch 2. We were due for a Switch 2 game to actually come up with a really good score outside of the 70s, which we haven't gotten since like Donkey Kong Bonanza, so this is really good to see, especially as a Pokemon spinoff. So if you're new to this, what I do is grab all the reviews up and put them into one juicy review bag for you guys. But I'll be focusing on 4 reviews that I watched, and they are coming from Nintendo Life, GameSpot, Game Informer, and VGC, respectively. Normally I throw IGN in there, but they did not have a video review that I can show off for you guys, at least not yet. Now let me also add that I am normally not a huge Pokemon fan, and also not a huge life sim fan. So this normally would not be a game I care about whatsoever. But I think these reviews were so blaringly good and interesting to me, it started to pique my interest to a point where I'm actually considering it. That's for a separate video, but let's jump into the reviews because there's a lot to unpack here. First, I want to start off with Nintendo Life, and this was their key takeaways. They said that this was one of the most robust and enticing Pokemon games they have ever played. They said that there's tons of transformations that allow you to change your Ditto human character into multiple different things in order to chop down wood, grow vegetation, or even break through blocks. But the breaking through blocks thing can be a little finicky apparently. When you're trying to angle it up or hit a certain block, you'll probably a lot of the time accidentally break a block you're not supposed to or you're not trying to. Nintendo Life states that this is the most free a Pokemon game has ever felt. Punching holes through walls to enter new areas or allowing river water to flow in from a different area feels so cool. Now they did state that this story feels kind of like a guide, similar to Animal Crossing New Horizons, but it can be skipped entirely if you just choose to freely explore the different regions on your own. But I've heard from other reviewers that the story was really good, so we'll get back to that. They did state it has some Animal Crossing-like tendencies where you might have to wait a day or so for a building to finish, which requires you to go do other things or just turn the game off and wait. And sometimes it can feel very overwhelming with so many tools at hand, because there's storage boxes for each area of the map that keeps tons of the things that you found. Now, Nintendo Life said that the performance is really good. It looks and runs so well. There's tons of detail and tons of the objects and furniture, and there's only a few dips that they notice, but normally running at a smooth 60 frames per second. And they finished a review saying that the story takes around 14 hours until you reach the credits. But overall, Nintendo Life gave it an 8 out of 10, said it's a super fun game, but some tedious drawbacks that slow down the experience. Now, GameSpot's review was one of my favorites. They really went into detail about what the game has to offer, and some things that I didn't even hear in most of the reviews. They start off by saying it's one of the best Pokemon spin-offs ever, which is something that you're going to hear from a lot of the reviewers. They also say it's a darker, more scarier tone of a post-humanity world. Now that's something that I'm always a big fan of, is post-apocalyptic worlds in Nintendo games. I don't know, do I hate humans? No, I'm just saying I love the tone. That's why I love the story of Splatoon and Pikmin. I love that type of stuff, so hearing how the whole story deals with that alone is pretty interesting to me. GameSpot states how finding new Pokemon is a blast, but it's different in this game. You could just straight up come across them as they're hidden in the world itself, or you can do really cool environmental puzzles in order to get them to spawn. For instance, there's one that gives you a template layout where you need to place a bench beside a punching bag to get a Hitmonchan to spawn. So it's kind of like reading Lego instructions and actually building that Lego set. You just have to go out and find the pieces in order to build what they want you to build, which is actually pretty cool. GameSpot also talks about how there's story-critical Pokemon with distinct names and unique stories individual to each and every single one of them. Like I said, these Pokemon are tied to the story, so you're forced to actually interact with them, and they'll have their own individual stories. Some of them are fine and funny and goofy, and some of them are sad and actually tie into the overarching post-apocalyptic world theme, which is also really cool to me. But there are also tons of Pokemon to find. But most of them are going to be classic Gen 1 Pokemon, but you can indeed find Pokemon all the way from Red and Blue up to the recent Scarlet and Violet. There's actually tons of secrets also hidden within the actual world. Like there's hidden areas and little underground locations, and they tie to the story with lore in them as well that you can find, and they're all completely optional. And last but not least, GameSpot also brings up the fact that you have to wait for certain builds, but they claim it's not that bad. The game actually encourages you to not rush to the end and actually to go explore and do other things instead of bolting straight to the end of your 14-hour adventure. Now, from what I've heard with the reviews, there's only a couple of these per area, and some of them, you know, seem like it's actually tedious and annoying, but some people make it seem like it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. But overall, GameSpot gives the game a 9 out of 10 and states how it's a great spin-off with tons of attention to detail, secrets to uncover, and a big fun Lego project with heartfelt moments and fun new Pokemon to be found around every corner. Next up, we have Game Informer, which was another review that I was pretty fond on. Now, they said that this was one of the best laid-back simulation titles in years. They claim it's really difficult to put down. You'll be addicted to this world and to its characters and even to its story. They said that the story is full of interesting mysteries, especially with the humans. Your whole journey is trying to find the humans and your own trainer and find out what happened to them and where did they go. And even the Pokemon will bring up history of the humans, and they'll have little references to past games and to the humans themselves, as they're all trying to restructure this world full of Pokemon and trainers once again. Game Informer also brings up how the building can take a long time and made them feel stressful, simply due to the fact that they try to hurry up and complete tasks in order to get their building started at a good time, for instance before midnight, so that way the building could be finished the next day. And you know, it's a lot of the times a 24-hour wait, so yeah, they were trying to rush to specific deadlines instead of taking their time, which of course they did also mention that this could just be a reviewer thing where they have to hurry up and get stuff out before a deadline, where the casual player may not even come across an issue like this. They also state that there's no real rewards for exploring. You know, the reward is the exploring itself, which they actually really like though, because they said once again you can find really unique areas that dive deep into some really cool lore drops about the humans, and maybe even notes or left behind objects that kind of tie into the story. But exploring is definitely worth it, especially if you're somebody into story and lore content. You're definitely not going to want to miss things that are hidden around the map. Overall, Game Informer gave the game a 9 out of 10 and said that Pokopia was a game of wonder and exploration and an extremely good spin-off. That then leaves us with VGC, or Video Game Chronicle. This is one of the few reviews that I've heard in a long time that absolutely praised the game from top to bottom. Video Games Chronicle loved this thing, and they already put in over 100 hours, and they said, quote, "It's the first must-have Switch 2 exclusive," which is a super bold claim, because I think that belongs to Donkey Kong Bonanza as one of them at least. But no, they said this was the only must-have Switch 2 title so far for the Switch 2, which is crazy to even hear. A spin-off, a sim game of Pokemon. VGC's review is one of the few reasons why I started to really get interested in this game, because they really dove deep into not just the story, but what comes after, because they claim that after beating the game, very similarly to Animal Crossing, that's when the true game starts, because there's so much to find still, there's still so many Pokemon out there that they have not found, and so much stuff to do and collect and just have fun with on this island. They also state it's one of the better stories in a Pokemon game that keeps you guessing until the very end of the game, and there's tons of funny jokes and references that younger and even older fans will love when they come across them. One unfortunate gripe they found was that there's some long load times between the different zones when you enter a new one. They claim that this could be because there's a lot to load in each area, as it saves everything that you did, every item that's out, every item that you put in every box. There's just so much that is keeping track of, so they completely understand, but it can be tedious if you're constantly going from zone to zone, area to area. They also state that the music is great. There's tons of good remixes from past games, and you can even create your own playlist of music after collecting CDs that you can find throughout the world. Now, he said something about the music being only for certain areas, so I don't know if he meant like there's only a jukebox for one area that you can play, or does he mean that the jukebox only has certain songs for certain areas. Either way, there's a jukebox in their CDs and you can play music. That sounds pretty cool. I mean, that's already more than what Mario Kart World does, at least. Overall, VGC states that it's a 5 out of 5, the best spin-off and one of the best games in the entire series, and they just gave it constant super praise from start to finish. This is something that definitely caught my attention. When this game was first revealed, I really had no interest. Not until the first Nintendo Treehouse, that is, where I started seeing a lot of the things that the game had to offer, and it actually started exciting me just a slight bit. But after these reviews, I think I'm kind of more interested in this game than before. Am I going to pick up the game? I'm not quite sure yet, but I am at the point where I am genuinely thinking about it, because from what I've heard, It sounds like this game has a lot to offer, and it's a lot deeper and more enticing than something like Animal Crossing New Horizons for me, because it actually has a unique story and elements of a story, which is something that I desperately wanted in Animal Crossing, which I get it, it's Animal Crossing, you're not really supposed to have that, it's more just a life sim. But after all of these reviews, where do you stand with this game? Has this increased the likelihood of you picking up this game, or has it decreased for some reason? Let me know in the comments down below what you're thinking, and are you going to play Pokemon Pokopia when it releases in just a couple of days this Thursday? But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before you head out. And like always, I hope you all have a blessed day. See you guys.